Hello everyone! It looks like it's time for me to review Spider-Man Homecoming. For those who are unaware, I don't like Spider-Man Homecoming. It was a movie I was once excited for, but after seeing Captain America Civil War and the Spider-Man Homecoming trailers, I grew to dislike the direction they were taking Spider-Man. After reviewing both of the Spider-Man Homecoming trailers, I decided to not go and see Spider-Man Homecoming, but surprisingly, people want me to review it. Now, I heard a lot of things about this movie. I heard it was the best Spider-Man movie of all time, and the best superhero movie of all time, which are big statements. However, I also heard that some big Spider-Man fans hated the movie and the direction it was going. But after countless positive reviews, critical acclaim, and people wanting me to actually review the movie, I decided, why not? Let's give this movie a shot. I went into this movie with a completely open mind, ready to accept any changes that they would make to the Spider-Man story. I gave this movie a fair chance. I didn't think about the Spider-Man Homecoming trailers, I didn't think about what people had to say about the movie, and honestly, it was one of the worst superhero movies I have ever seen. There were a few scenes and ideas that I liked, but it was hard for me to watch. With that being said, if you love this movie and you do not want to see me give it a mostly negative review, do not watch any further. The movie starts out with a great opening scene where we see the backstory of Adrian Toomes, also known as the Vulture. The Vulture is an interesting villain. He uses a suit that he invented to fly around and commit crimes. One of the only things I liked about the trailers was the Vulture. He looked menacing, had a goal in mind, and is played by Michael Keaton. Sure, the suit is gigantic, but with any luck, this could still be one of the best renditions of Vulture ever done. Him and his crew are looting alien technology from the Avengers movie, but get shut down. This scene is great, and it shows the violent nature of the villain. They end up keeping some of the alien technology and use it to create powerful weapons. 8 years later, Adrian's crime business becomes a success, and we see Peter Parker filming his trip to Berlin and the fight between all of the heroes in Captain America Civil War. This scene is also okay, even though Peter Parker is known for photography. Tony Stark then tells Peter to remain in New York and stop crime there instead of becoming an Avenger, while giving him advice, but we've already established this scene in the trailer reviews. Whatever, new story, different direction, I'll let it slide for now. So we see Peter Parker go to high school where we already have our first major problem. Eugene Thompson, better known as Flash Thompson. In the comics, Flash Thompson was an all-star on the football team, and he got his nickname Flash for being so fast on the football field. Flash and Peter were once friends when they were kids, but as they got older, Flash realized he needed to become more popular and ditched Peter in the process, even bullying him for being good at school to make himself look superior. Flash Thompson, when well written, is one of the most intriguing Spider-Man characters in the entire series. Especially in Spectacular Spider-Man. In this show, Flash will bully Peter, but sometimes give him help and ask Peter for help in secret. It's made clear that he doesn't want to bully Peter, he does it to remain popular in high school. There are times Peter and Flash are rivals, there are times they help each other out. It truly is a unique relationship that I've never seen done before or again. He's also a huge Spider-Man fan, and he doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. There are so many things you could do with this character, and the only series to ever write Flash Thompson well was Spectacular Spider-Man. In past Spider-Man movies, he was written pretty poorly, but not as bad as he is here. In this movie, Flash Thompson is not on the football team and instead got his nickname from a car he drives. The name doesn't mean as much when it's an item instead of skill. In the comics, he wasn't good at school and he was a big dude. In this movie, he's on the academic team and has no muscle mass whatsoever. So we can't call Peter Parker Puny Parker because Peter Parker is bigger and stronger than he is even without the spider powers. So he's that annoying kid who acts like he's better than everyone else but has literally nothing to back it up. Again, in the comics, he had an entire football team to back him up. Here, he has a fast car. So needless to say, this is a drastic change from the comics that ruins this character. But it's okay because Peter's best friend Ned Leeds is here. Ned Leeds is also the stereotypical nerd that follows Peter around and helps him out. He isn't in any way interesting except for his character becoming Hobgoblin later in the comics. I was never a big Hobgoblin fan, but I am curious to see this character turn from Peter's friend into Peter's enemy. We already know from the trailers that he knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and he does help him throughout the movie. So that's two things helping Spider-Man instead of him doing it by himself and becoming his own hero. But again, I'll accept this change. It obviously isn't as good, but I'll accept it for now.
We also see Liz Allen, who is Peter's love interest for the sole reason of people have already seen Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy and can't possibly see it a second time. But this isn't a bad thing. Liz Allen is a good character, and Peter and Liz's relationship in Spectacular Spider-Man was incredibly well written from start to finish. I hope we get that here, but I just have to point this out, her acting isn't good. No matter how I feel about every character, the acting seems to range from decent to very good except for her. She never blew me away as a love interest and is so bland and boring, I'd rather watch this Liz Allen. Also, the relationship grows too slow, is too boring thanks to the acting, and then just sort of happens out of nowhere. But we'll get to that later. We then see Betty Brant on the school news.
You mean Glory Grant, right? She was a student at Midtown High. She briefly dated Harry Osborn in the Spectacular Spider-Man series. No, this is Betty Brant, J. Jonah Jameson's secretary for the Daily Bugle. That's not in this movie, is it? Okay, because that's far too important in the Spider-Man series to have in a movie like this. Yes, the Amazing Spider-Man movies didn't have the Daily Bugle in it either, but those weren't great to begin with.
I honestly thought the creators mixed up Betty Brant and Glory Grant, but then I realized that Betty Brant's full name is Betty Brant Leeds. That's right, she marries Ned Leeds in the comics, and I guess they're going to do that throughout this movie series too. That's why she's in high school. Okay, it makes sense. She announces that the totally 80s homecoming is coming up. Get it? Spider-Man Homecoming, there's a homecoming at the school. I knew they'd do something like that. We then see Peter Parker making web fluid in chemistry class, which is pretty cool. Then there's the infamous Peter and Ned discussing girls' clothing scene, and some girl who I assume is a new character says they're weird. Then we see Peter trying to get out of the academic team for the Stark Internship, which is code for stopping crime as Spider-Man. That's right, he's stopping crime not for a great responsibility, but to impress Tony Stark. Oh, by the way, Uncle Ben is not in the movie and is never mentioned.
If it wasn't for me accepting all the changes, at this moment I should have turned the movie off, because Uncle Ben is so important to the story. If it wasn't for his beliefs, or his death, then Spider-Man would be in a pro wrestling feud with either Crusher Hogan or Bonesaw.
The main complaint is that, oh, we've seen it already, we've seen it done twice. I don't care, if you don't want to see it again, don't watch the movie. Uncle Ben is so important to the story that his quote, "with great power comes great responsibility," has been remembered for decades. It's what drives Spider-Man to help people and be a hero. But here, he just has to impress Tony Stark for an internship. We see Peter leave school, go to a deli, talk to the owner, and change into Spider-Man to fight crime. Alright, this should be cool, right? Wrong. Besides stopping a bike thief, Spider-Man shows that he can't do anything right. He even gets yelled at by Stan Lee, making a cameo. They also show him riding a train, which is a reference to Spider-Man 2. And there's also this random scene where this guy yells at Spider-Man, and I didn't understand it. Was it a joke? I don't know, but don't worry, we'll get to the jokes soon enough. He gives some directions and then calls Tony Stark's assistant Happy to tell him what he did because, you know, no great responsibilities here. He has to tell Tony Stark what he did so he can become an Avenger. He then stops a bank robbery but notices that the bank robbers are using highly advanced technology. They then accidentally blow up the deli he was at earlier in the day, but he saves the owner, who's never to be seen again. He calls Happy again for some reason and then realizes his backpack has been stolen, which causes him to lose his identity to Ned Leeds, which was terrible in the trailer, and oh look at this, it's terrible here.
A superhero's secret identity is so important to keep. When a superhero keeps giving away his secret identity, it makes the whole secret identity thing pointless.
If you look at superhero shows like CW's Arrow or The Flash, you'll notice a lot of people know Barry Allen is the Flash and Oliver Queen is the Green Arrow. It diminishes the secret identity when too many people know. In Spectacular Spider-Man, the only person who finds out Peter Parker is Spider-Man is Eddie Brock. And that's because the alien symbiote told him that. In that show, Spider-Man can keep his identity a secret, and he's also a strong, viable threat. Here? Of course not. He loses his identity 22 minutes into the movie. Also, there's going to be a Venom movie that takes place in the Spider-Man Homecoming universe. I like Venom, but I don't want to see him in this Spider-Man universe. Especially when you realize Eddie Brock will get the symbiote before Peter Parker, ruining an incredibly amazing storyline where Eddie and Peter start out as friends and become enemies. Now, I've heard that Spider-Man won't be in the new Venom movie, which makes me want to see it a little bit more because this Spider-Man is terrible. But you know Venom and Spider-Man are going to cross paths, and when they do, and the symbiote was never with Spider-Man originally, it's going to be awkward. That's a terrible change, but let's continue. So this is where we see the new young Aunt May, and to be fair, her being young isn't that big of a deal. Sure, I'd prefer the old Aunt May that's filled with knowledge and experience, but hey, her being this young doesn't ruin the character. She has one decent scene, and every other scene has some middle-aged guy trying to get with her, which gets old quickly. So Ned Leeds claims this is a great thing and accidentally tells Liz Allen that Peter knows Spider-Man through the Stark internship. So they invite Peter and Ned to a party at Liz Allen's house, and they tell Peter and Ned to bring Spider-Man with them. So Aunt May drops them off, also referencing a scene from the first Spider-Man movie. Man, I wish I was watching that instead of this. And they go inside to find Flash DJing. What are you trying to do with Flash Thompson? He won't play football, but he'll DJ? Why? So Peter is about to change into Spider-Man when he notices an explosion in the distance. He goes to investigate but realizes there's nothing to web swing from. So he runs across a golfing range while the sprinklers are on.
So, you're making fun of Spider-Man. I mean, I get it's a joke, but you can't deny that this scene was added just to make fun of Spider-Man and his powers.
I mean, these movies weren't great, but they didn't outright make fun of Spider-Man. So he finds where the explosion is coming from and, wait a second, a guy in a yellow jacket? That must be this movie's lazy attempt at the Shocker. The Shocker is a very underrated Spider-Man villain. Sometimes he's treated like a joke, other times he's treated as a menacing threat, but regardless of the way he's treated, I still think he's really cool. The outfit is awesome, his abilities are awesome, and sure, Spectacular Spider-Man changed the character's alter ego from Herman Schultz to Montana, who is the leader of the Enforcers, which was a very drastic change, but they made it work. And they still made Shocker an intimidating villain. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, after all, this may not be the Shocker. This may just be some guy in a yellow jacket. After all, it takes more than a guy in a yellow jacket to be Shocker. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game should tell you that much. So the explosions end up being two of Vulture's men testing weapons. Spider-Man gives away his position when his phone rings. Hey, it happened in Spectacular Spider-Man. Peter has to learn to put his phone on vibrate. The Shocker hits Spider-Man with a giant glove that doesn't shoot out any shockwaves. It's just like a giant singular boxing glove.
Seriously? You can't even do Shocker's gloves right?
They try to escape in their van and Spider-Man chases them. Is this going to be an awesome chase scene? No, of course not. Instead, it's a scene where Spider-Man can run through the suburbs creating quirky antics, like interrupting table tennis, scaring people, and splashing people by web swinging into a pool. Spider-Man has them where he wants them, but Vulture comes in and just lifts Spider-Man up into the sky, which is awesome. A parachute shoots out of his suit, which is a reference to an actual Spider-Man comic where he fights Vulture, but it doesn't go off and he falls into a lake where he's then saved by Iron Man. Because, you know, this Spider-Man can't do anything without help. Why didn't you just have the parachute go off? Do we really need to see Spider-Man get saved because he can't do anything right? So, Tony Stark is in this movie for some reason and decides to talk to Peter and tells him, you can't fight Vulture because you're not ready. And honestly, I agree with Tony Stark. This Spider-Man is terrible and hasn't done a single thing right the entire movie. So why is this even in question? If I've never heard of Spider-Man and saw this Spider-Man, I'd think he's some little kid who can't do anything right. So Spider-Man finds a part of the alien tech that was used in the weapons of the incredibly epic and awesome chase that had no quirky moments whatsoever. And then we cut to Adrian Toomes talking to his men. He scolds Shocker for not being discreet and makes a pro wrestling reference in the process, which I like. So Shocker says he wants out and tells Adrian Toomes that he's going to tell his family about the way he actually makes money. So Adrian disintegrates him and gives his singular glove to the other guy. Because that's how you build a villain. You have him look tough, act tough, and be tough, then get rid of him and start over.
We're not gonna get Shocker with the mask, are we?
Hey, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 video game started out with a guy in a yellow jacket, but transitioned to a full-on Shocker in the mask. And they built him up throughout 2 cutscenes. So maybe this incredibly rushed Shocker will be better than this movie's adaptation. So Peter and Ned start messing with the alien technology at school and the Shocker and some other guy go looking for it. This brief scene where they're in the art wing is a scene I actually enjoyed. Instead of screwing things up, Peter hides upside down under a desk and places a spider tracer on him. They find out the villains are going to Washington and want... Wait, Washington? Why Washington? Why not New York? You know, where 99% of Spider-Man takes place? Whatever, so Peter rejoins the academic team on their school trip, only to go to Washington to stop the villains. He realizes Tony is tracking the suit, so they go to try to remove the tracker, and this is the part where they make fun of Spider-Man's age. They did it very seldomly in the comics, they never did it in any of the other movies, and they certainly never did it in Spectacular Spider-Man, but of course they have to do it here. Why? Because the training wheels protocol joke sounds as unfunny as it's presented in the movie. Get it? Training wheels? Because he's young, and they need to make fun of that for some reason? Oh, you don't find that funny? Well, don't worry, there are plenty of other awkward and unfunny jokes after this. So they remove the training wheels protocol, and Peter sneaks out to stop the bad guys.
Now this is where the movie becomes even more infuriating to watch, because by removing the training wheels protocol, the suit that Tony Stark made now has access to its full abilities.
Basically meaning the suit can talk to him. So that's 3 things helping Spider-Man in total. You have Tony Stark rescuing him on occasion, then you have Ned Leeds being the guy in the chair because every hero ever has to have a guy in a chair, and now you have the suit talking to him too. This is your chance to make Spider-Man a unique hero like he always was in the comics. He fought crime all on his own. When you have 3 separate things helping him, it doesn't make him unique anymore. Why does he need a guy in the chair? He never had that before. Why does the suit have to talk to him? He's not Iron Man. This is so forced and ridiculous. So he doesn't web swing to where the villains are hiding, he instead rides on the back of a slow-moving truck to get there. I'm surprised there wasn't a tractor nearby to web onto. He finds the villains at a gas station, he screws up web swinging because, you know, he's a strong independent hero, and Shocker wants to investigate but doesn't know how to use his singular glove. Okay, the Shocker from Ultimate Spider-Man is now written better than this one. Hey, you can take him out in 2 seconds, but he actually knows how to use his gloves. So Spider-Man now realizes he has a ton of different web abilities, which is pretty cool. Let's just hope they don't go over the top with this. I'd hate to see the web shooters talk to him too. In this scene, Vulture steals something from a truck by using a device to get him through the roof. Spider-Man tries to stop him and in the process gets a concussion and wakes up hours later in the truck's storing facility. That doesn't surprise me at all, this Spider-Man is terrible. He's stuck in the storage facility until morning, and the scene after this is such a waste of time. It's just him in the storage facility reading, testing out his web abilities, practicing web swinging that he never seems to use, and talking to the artificial intelligence in the suit that he conveniently named Suit Lady. Give me a break. So he gets out, the Midtown High academic team wins the decathlon, but Spider-Man realizes that the alien technology is a bomb and can be activated through radiation. Ned Leeds has one too, so he has to warn Ned. He tries calling, but there's no answer.
So does that mean he web swings as fast as possible to warn Ned?
No, he instead webs onto the slowest truck on the highway. So the team go to visit the Washington Monument. Spider-Man, still in a hurry, webs onto a bus that's going about the same speed as the truck.
Why did you put Spider-Man in this situation? I get it, he can't web swing because there aren't any buildings around. So why have him go to Washington?
So radiation causes the orb to get charged up. Spider-Man upgrades from riding slow vehicles to running. This is so stupid. Long story short, the orb blows up and Spider-Man has to save them. What comes after this is a great scene that actually makes me feel like I'm watching a Spider-Man movie. From Spider-Man climbing the Washington Monument, to the way the camera's angled as he tries to get inside, to him breaking the glass, to the way he simply saves them, it's all well done. Sure, they reference Gwen Stacy's death in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, Flash Thompson asks Spider-Man if he knows Peter Parker, which isn't funny, and some little spider robot helps Spider-Man, which is 4 things now, but hey, it's a good scene that I enjoyed. It was action-packed and made Spider-Man look good. Sure, he's beyond saving at this point, but he went from -1,000 out of 10 to -900 out of 10 just from this scene alone. They followed this scene up with Shocker practicing his boxing skills because that's what Shocker's known for.
He shoots shockwaves out of 2 individual gloves. He's not a boxer.
Adrian is upset that Spider-Man is interfering in his business, and then we cut back to high school where Peter Parker gets detention. Something actually funny happens from the girl who I still don't know, so they make fun of Spider-Man again by having him do impressions of other superheroes who Spider-Man is better than. Not in this universe, but in real life. He finds out, the suit finds out that the villains are going to be selling weapons and Spider-Man needs to intimidate the guy from earlier in order to find out where this will go down. He also uses the suit's Intimidation Mode, which makes me hate the suit even more. So for those who haven't seen this movie, I want you to guess what happens next. Do you think Spider-Man either A, appears like a tough superhero who will do whatever it takes to stop Vulture, or B, gets intimidated by a guy with his hand webbed to the trunk of a car? If you picked B, then you have felt the struggle of watching your favorite superhero get pushed around, made fun of, and humiliated. At first I thought this scene was okay because Spider-Man isn't really that intimidating to begin with, but then I remembered the amazing intimidation scene from Spectacular Spider-Man and realized I'd rather be watching that than this. So he finds out that the villains are going to sell the weapons to Mac Gargan, who in the comics is Scorpion. But it's okay if you don't know that because he has a tattoo of a scorpion on his neck. So Spider-Man glides to the boat and him and his little robot spider stake the place out and find Mac Gargan. Tony Stark calls him during all of this to congratulate him about saving his friends in the Washington Monument. So Spider-Man interferes on the deal going down, defeats all the enemies, almost kills Mac Gargan, and defeats Shocker with complete ease that it's almost laughable. Sure, Spider-Man taking out thugs is fine, but Shocker misses one punch, gets stuck, and is out of the battle. The fight was quicker than the Shocker boss fight in Ultimate Spider-Man. This is the worst Shocker ever. So Spider-Man sees Adrian Toomes, the FBI and Adrian get involved, and Vulture splits the boat in half. Spider-Man tries to save the people on the boat by webbing the boat back together, and does for a second, which makes one guy cheer for Spider-Man. But then the boat splits apart and Iron Man saves the day, which causes the guy who once cheered for Spider-Man to cheer for Iron Man. Well, this just shows you how little they think of Spider-Man. This scene is horrendous. Just horrendous. And I don't think I need to explain why. So Iron Man rips apart Spider-Man so much so that this Spider-Man cannot come back from this. This Spider-Man was ruined, but he is now ruined forever after this. I thought Spider-Man was down on his luck in the past Spider-Man movies. In this one, he's completely ripped apart in every single way, is constantly made fun of for his age, and has shown that he can't do anything without massive amounts of help. And even with the massive amounts of help, he still finds a way to screw things up. So to make this scene even worse, Iron Man takes Spider-Man's suit away and grounds him, which means the final scene of the movie will have Spider-Man in this terrible outfit. So he goes home humiliated and destroyed. Aunt May gets upset, he says he lost the Stark internship, goes back to detention, finishes the Death Star, actually asks Liz Allen to the homecoming dance, right when I forgot that was a thing, and has to hastily go through quirky antics to prepare for this dance. So Spider-Man shows up at Liz's house and finds out that Adrian Toomes is Liz's father. Okay, these next couple of scenes are great. Peter feels uncomfortable in Vulture's presence because he's fought him so many times before. And as they're driving to the homecoming dance, they start to talk and Adrian realizes Peter Parker is Spider-Man. This scene is awesome. From the cinematography, the lines, and the amazing acting from Michael Keaton and Tom Holland. You can see Adrian slowly figure out Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and it's great. But this does mean that Spider-Man has lost his identity for the second time, which is terrible. It does show Vulture's intelligence, something he's really well known for in the comics, so I'll let it slide. He tells Peter to stay out of his way, Peter thanks him because he's a tough superhero, and leaves Liz at the dance to stop Vulture. So he leaves in the terrible suit, and guess what? Shocker's back. And nobody cares because Shocker was written so poorly throughout this entire movie, and he isn't really Shocker.
Without a mask, he's not hiding his identity. He's just Herman Schultz.
I never knew your name was Herman.
So Shocker almost kills Spider-Man, and this is just idiotic. This Shocker has done nothing. He didn't even know how to use a singular super boxing glove. Why is he almost killing this pathetic Spider-Man when Spider-Man took him out quicker than the Ultimate Spider-Man boss fight earlier in the movie? He's, of course, saved by Ned Leeds, so add that to the very long list of people who have either saved Spider-Man's life or helped Spider-Man in this movie. You can't even beat this joke Shocker without help. Sure, he didn't get his web shooters on, but how about you wrote it like this? He beats Shocker without any help, and that's the last time we see Shocker again. How about that? No, have him get beat up and saved by his friend who isn't Harry Osborn. So Spider-Man steals Flash Thompson's car and okay.
Why can't Spider-Man web swing? Why is he stealing Flash Thompson's car? Can he even web swing? He's only web swung like twice throughout the entire movie. Come to think of it, I've never seen him use his spider sense either. Does he have a spider sense? Did he get bit by a radioactive spider or is the suit doing everything for him? In the comics, Spider-Man would stop people trying to steal a car. In fact, in the movie he stops someone trying to steal a car. So why is he stealing a car? So the quote-unquote best superhero movie of all time has the superhero stealing a car. Let that sink in for a minute.
This may seem like I'm nitpicking, but when I see Spider-Man stealing a car, riding on the backs of trucks and buses, and running, I'm done. I'm just done with this movie. Why can't he just web swing? Explain to me how stealing cars is any better. And can you also explain to me why I need to see Ned Leeds help Spider-Man and take part in a joke that was so bad it literally made me cringe? So Spider-Man gets destroyed by Vulture. That's not a surprise at all. And then they do the "this is the end" scene. You know, the "this is the end" scene. The scene from the comics where Spider-Man is crushed by something and thinks this is the end. In Spectacular Spider-Man, the scene was done just fine. It showed Spider-Man had a good run as a hero, but this may be the end for him. Here, Spider-Man's run as a hero was so laughably bad that it makes this scene completely pointless. It's made even worse when he looks at the mask, which is supposed to be a heartfelt moment, but the mask looks so bad that it ruins this already terrible moment altogether. This costume is horrible. Why is he wearing it for the end of the movie? So Vulture tries to steal something from an invisible plane, Spider-Man tries to stop him, a barely decent action scene ensues, the plane crashes, Vulture's about to kill Spider-Man but leaves him to try to steal more alien technology. The alien technology almost blows Vulture up, but Spider-Man saves him. So he doesn't even defeat Vulture, he just waits for Vulture to screw up. Spider-Man is known for dodging villains' attacks and then outsmarting them when the moment is right. He uses his quick wits and intelligence to defeat the villains that are much stronger than he is. He doesn't do that at all here. He just gets beat up, someone saves him, and we move on. So Liz is upset and she's leaving Midtown High. The acting is so bad, I wanted to skip this scene altogether. I get it's hard to act. I get it. But her acting isn't good. So the new team captain for the academic team is Michelle, who is the girl from earlier. She also says that her friends call her MJ.
You ruined Flash Thompson. You ruined Shocker. And now you need to ruin Mary Jane Watson. Okay, Mary Jane Watson, not Michelle Jane Watson, Mary Jane Watson, is a character whose presentation is so important.
She's Spider-Man's world. Here, she's barely in the movie. Now, I think they're going to build her character up throughout the many unfortunate sequels they'll make of this movie, and they may have her go through a transformation scene like Gwen Stacy in Spectacular Spider-Man, but that's not what Mary Jane is. That's not Mary Jane's character. If this was Gwen Stacy, I'd be fine with it, but Mary Jane is supposed to be the attractive love interest of the entire school, including Flash Thompson, who
can date any girl I want in this crummy school.
This is another terrible change that ruins the movie and the movie series going forward, but unfortunately, the movie couldn't end there.
We get an unfunny, awkwardly delivered joke, and then Tony Stark tells Spider-Man he can be an Avenger. He offers Peter the Iron Spider suit. That looks nothing like the Iron Spider suit. Spider-Man doesn't want to become an Avenger, which is good, but it's not like he stands up to Tony Stark, he just turns him down. And then Tony asks Pepper Potts to marry him, and I don't care at all. Spider-Man goes home, finds that Tony Stark was gracious enough to give the suit back, and right when you think you can leave this movie without any other bad thing happening, he loses his identity for the third time to Aunt May. You might as well call him the Flash or Green Arrow because he loses his identity to everyone, has a guy who helps him out on a computer, and has a suit with too many gadgets. But wait, there's an after-credits scene where Mac Gargan survived and said he's going after Spider-Man. He asks Adrian if he knows his identity, and Adrian lies and says no. So we're getting Scorpion for the next movie. Or maybe we'll get Mac Gargan in street clothes with a lame robotic tail. Well, whatever they do with Scorpion, it can't be as bad as the Scorpion from the Amazing Spider-Man video game. Actually, don't hold me to that, they may prove me wrong.
So needless to say, I hate Spider-Man Homecoming. I feel like I saw a completely different movie than the one that got positive reviews.
This movie was infuriating to watch as a Spider-Man fan, but even if you put that aside, I still didn't like it at all. Yes, there were some good scenes, good moments, and a great villain, but when you completely change characters that didn't need to be changed, then you lose me as a fan and you lose me as a viewer because Flash Thompson doesn't work as a nerd. I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming blatantly makes fun of Spider-Man and makes him look like a weak, pathetic hero, and that isn't what Spider-Man is.
Now, like I said before, I felt like this movie ruined Spider-Man, and it kinda does, but it kind of doesn't.
Sure, it was terrible, and this is one of the worst renditions of Spider-Man ever created, but it's not the first time the character has gone through major changes that didn't work, and clearly it won't be the last time. Spider-Man has been around for a long time, and this is just a different take on the hero that some like and some don't. Spider-Man is an icon, so it'll take a lot more than this movie, or this show, or this video game to change that. And after watching the new Spider-Man video game trailer, it really shows there is still a bright future for Spider-Man in other areas besides this movie series. This trailer was awesome. Spider-Man shows he's a competent hero, Mary Jane looks great, Iron Man isn't saving Spider-Man every 10 seconds, Spider-Man actually web swings and uses his spider sense, Mr. Negative is a great villain to have in the game, and look, Shocker has a mask and gloves that shoot shockwaves. Thank you.
There are plenty of Spider-Man video games based off of the Spider-Man movies, but there isn't one for Spider-Man Homecoming. The new Spider-Man game for PS4 has its own story, and I think there's a reason for that.
I saw this list of best Spider-Man of all time. The Spectacular Spider-Man got second best, and the Spider-Man Homecoming Spider-Man got best. How? What has he done by himself? Nothing. He screws up everything. In trying to stop Vulture, he gave himself a concussion. He gets saved by Iron Man twice in one movie. He loses his identity 3 times in one movie. There's no responsibility here. There's no care. He stole Flash Thompson's car because of his confusing inability to web swing. He has the worst Spider-Man costume ever that he didn't even make. How is he the best? Tell me. The only logical reason that this Spider-Man is known as the best Spider-Man of all time is because this movie is new.
I may be one of the only people to give this movie a negative review, but I just don't see how you can get behind Spider-Man in this movie. With that being said, this is the worst Spider-Man movie I have ever seen. Yes, I think it's worse than Spider-Man 3.